dear and respected friend, thank you so much for your kind participation. And we are going to start today's session with an invocation of the sort. So just share the screen, and I request you to kindly mute yourself so that you can avoid this. So thank you, dear and respected friend. Thank you so much for your kind attention. I, Randhir Kumar Gautam, on behalf of Swadhyay Sanchak Circle of Co-Learning and the Vishwaneedam Center for Asian Listening, Puducherry and Chennai, welcome you to attend today's international webinar on the very topic, cultural creativity and social development. It is a movement of extreme pleasure to welcome the guests who are virtually present here to attend this webinar. I welcome Professor Dr. Marharyta Fabrykant, a leading research fellow at HSE University, Russia, and Associate Professor, Belarusian State University. I welcome Professor Radhakanta Barik sir, from IIPA, New Delhi. I welcome Dr. Ananta Giri sir, Gyan Gudui, Professor Osman, and many others from around the world. We can see Professor Sachi is there, Professor Ranjan Srivastava is there, Professor Darshan is there. So we welcome you, each and every of our co-nurturers. I can see many of our participants and all the participant viewers both on Facebook platform and Zoom platform. First of all, let me give you a brief introduction of our honorable speaker. I will be brief in their introduction so that we can have more time in discussing and presenting. Dr. Marharyta Fabrykant is a leading research fellow at HSE University and associate professor at Belarusian State University. She has 2 PhD degrees, one in sociology and another one in social psychology. And she is one of the significant people so far as the understanding of nationalism is concerned. She has written many papers on nationality, comparative quantitative analysis of nationality. Maybe I can share some of the important papers. One is in Belarusian State University. Hello, I request respected participants to mute. One paper that is published in 2021 is on educational studies, Moscow, and ethno-linguistic identity without language, and dynamics of national pride, attitude in post-Soviet Russia, and so on and so forth. We have also our respected speaker, Professor Barik. Professor Barik is I would say, the deep thinker, great teacher, and creative writer. He is a teacher. He is a retired professor from Indian Institute of Public Administration. He has written 2 books. One is Politics of the Movement and Land and Caste Politics in Bihar, and which received a critical acclaim. And he writes on politics, sociology, culture, and public administration. And he is also a creative writer. He writes symphonies and also a great poet. Let me also give a brief introduction to our Swadhyay Sanchak. Swadhyay Sanchak is a circle of self and mutual studies. It is an initiative of studying and learning together self, culture, societies, and the world. Friends associated with this are eager to walk and navigate with new horizons of thinking and new movements of social and cultural change at work in our contemporary world. We study seekers such as Sri Aurobindo, Mahatma Gandhi, Chittaranjan Das, a seeker and creative thinker from Odisha, and many others around the world. We also present our own writings and reflect upon our creativity together. We also invite seekers from different fields of life to share us with their lives, vision, sadhana, and the struggles for creating a world of beauty, dignity, and dialogue. We meet every Sunday. We have collaboration with different universities in India and abroad, and we are nurturing this dialogue last 3 years. So I will be also sharing my presentation. on the sources of cultural creativity from great sociologist Ronald Collins' theory. So first I would like to invite Professor Anant Kumar Giri to kindly give a kind of brief introduction of today's topic, and then we will invite Fabrykant and Professor Radhakanta. So Professor Giri, over to you.
Thank you so much, Randhir, and a warm welcome to friends, Dr. Marharyta, Dr. Barik, and all friends co-present, Osman and Dr. Mallika, and also Dr. Rafik, along with our other friends. The inspiration for this webinar emerged by my conversation with a friend of mine who is teaching at Darul Huda Islamic University. And Dr. Rafik, the registrar of the university, is present with us. Now, my friend and student Amir, who teaches social development there, he told me about the experience of this university and the way it has grown up over the decades, and how the cultural creativity of this area and our interested Muslim brothers and sisters, how they have really created educational institutions like Darul Huda Islamic University, and they have created a culture of learning and also supporting such activity. And Amir suggested that we need to learn from experience like this and explore further the theme of cultural creativity and social development. As we know, social development is a multidimensional process, and cultural creativity plays a very important role. And different ways that we can think about development and take new initiatives. So cultural creativity, rather than just reproduction of existing culture, plays an important role, also deepening and widening the discourse of social development. So in order that we can have a broad-based dialogue, Randhir and friends, what we can do, we can request Dr. Marharyta and Dr. Barik to initially speak for 15 minutes each. And then we also welcome the presentation of Randhir, and which would be followed by reflections from Dr. Mallika, Osman, and Dr. Rafik. Each one of them can take 5 to 7 minutes, please. And after that, we would have again a conversations among ourselves. So now I invite Dr. Marharyta to kindly make the presentation.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad to be here again at this great seminar, to see so many people who like to spend their Sunday evening such an academic way. In my presentation, I'll mostly be speaking about a new research on traces of creativity that I've been doing for the last couple of months, and will be doing until the end of next year at the least, with my colleagues from Nizhny Novgorod and Vyatka. And this is a project that is dedicated to finding potentially creative people, to finding them when they are at middle school or high school. And it's about helping them and find their way into creative industries and develop their potential. And I'll first speak about the general issues with what creativity is and what creativity probably is not. And then I'll especially unpack the issue of cross-cultural differences in the notions of creativity. Well, partly because they are all there, and partly because, well, cross-cultural research is what interests me most. So creativity. Oh, well, one thing nearly everybody seems to agree upon is that, well, creativity is something good. Yeah, we want more of that. If we mean creativity in the direct way, we want more things created. We want some novel approaches to some better ways of doing things, maybe some are not so obvious, but way better ways of resolving some issues and so on. And therefore, well, you know, creativity is currently at risk of joining the center of these words that have already come to mean, well, all things good, yeah, as opposed to all things bad. Where we delve beneath the surface, yeah, okay, so creativity is something good, but what is it exactly? Well, that's when we come across quite some issues. First of all, literally, create is something a synonym to make, maybe some a more exalted way of saying that to create something or to make something. But, well, obviously, when I do the same thing in the same way for a millionth time, it's no big deal, and it's not what comes to mind to most people when creativity is mentioned. And what usually comes to mind is probably something most closely associated with art. Yeah, when speak about creativity, some people imagine some artists or poets creating some new masterpiece, and some other people may have a mental image appearing, you know, of some young kids doing their creativity development classes. Yes, some projects like woodwork or embroidery or what's not. But that's where the issue lies. First, is creativity necessarily about creating something new? Well, apparently it is. But here, the first big issue is new for whom exactly? Yeah, when a child learns to read, it's a huge novelty for this child, and it's sometimes fun and satisfying for the teacher to see the kids learn new things. But yeah, all of us who teach at whatever level know that, I believe. But here the problem is, whether it's what's usually meant by creativity. Yeah? So, okay, so I discovered something new for myself, but maybe it's something that people around me have known for centuries. So that's obviously not something that's made the issue of creativity such a big deal. So usually what is meant by creativity is an ability to create something new for, well, not just for the individual, but for the community, maybe for the society in general, maybe for the whole humankind. This is a major issue. Sometimes we can evaluate it, sometimes not. And for example, in sciences, especially in hard sciences, it's probably easier to evaluate the degree of novelty of something than in fine arts, yeah, in literature. When something is done and presented as something innovative, Well, there is a saying that all philosophy is just footnotes to Plato, at least for Western philosophy, as Whitehead famously says. So it's quite an issue. And second, okay, supposing I take and say a sheet of paper and I cut it into exactly 1,000,000,027 pieces. Probably nobody has done it before me, but is it going to be creative? Not necessarily so, because it doesn't add anything to our knowledge or to our understanding of how things work and what things are. So apparently creativity is about creating something new, not just for the person, but for well, some kind of wider community. And also creativity is about designing something new and socially significant. And here the problem lies, yeah, who's going to evaluate the significance? In arts, things go in and out of fashion. And what's the pragmatic value of fine arts anyway is a widely debatable issue. We all know there must be something, but we maybe we differ wisely as to what this something is. And as to research, yeah, as to invention, some inventions may be underestimated and may remain underestimated for centuries. Probably because there is not enough technical skills to implement some abstract mathematical model, as it's been it used to be the case with some inventions in data science and math. It's no longer is apparently. So here again, who's going to judge? And here lies the big cross-cultural difference, because originally there's been some research that shows that some cultures supposedly value creativity more to a great extent than some other countries do. But later on, a research that involved representatives of all the cultures in question, which is also a very good idea to do, this research showed that no, it's not the case. In fact, all cultures value some creativity of some kinds, but they differ considerably as to what they consider creativity. And apparently in collectivist cultures, people place a bigger emphasis on creativity as something being directly, pragmatically useful to the whole community. And the prototype of a creative person is a social reformer, a politician, a successful entrepreneur, an innovative business person, these kind of things. While for representatives of more individualist cultures, it's primarily about the process of creation, about inspiration, about generating ideas. And for them, the prototype of a creative person is a poet, or a philosopher, a musician, something like that. And here lie some risks, yeah, because, for example, a creative person in an individualist culture is much more likely to go into fine arts than, say, into entrepreneurship, or, for example, into mathematics, simply because mathematics is not so much associated with some creativity, some area where a creative person can strive. And on the contrary, in collectivist cultures, there may be a risk of passing over some individuals who create something really valuable and really useful, but people who are not good at promoting themselves, and people who are not that good at, well, administrative skills, yeah, in organizing others to put their vision into practice. So this combined view is what gives us a notion of truly cultural creativity, something that can change the culture on the one hand, and something that can change, yeah, the society by creating new cultural patterns on the other hand. So, but this notion of creativity that encompasses both these views is still in the making. So maybe we can all contribute to the process of creating this more comprehensive vision of creativity. And that's all I'd like to say now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So, thank you, Fabrykant. As always, very, and you really beautifully articulated the basic creativity. And we had a respected friend, Dr. Fabrykant is also a social psychologist. So he incorporated social psychological insights in order to understand, make us understand the. So now I would like to invite Professor Radhakanta Barik sir to kindly share his topic.
Thank you very much. You have invited me to speak about human creativity. In reality, everybody creates something. If you look at a farmer, he goes to the field, he creates everything. He creates something. You look at a worker, he goes to industry or construction site, he is also creating, he or she are creating something. But the real issue comes, the challenge before social scientist or a artist or writer to look at their creativity and reflect over it. For instance, this is where we are confronting the society. Society is an intellectual in social science faces the challenge is very clearly before us, and this is the age where challenges are more. Why? Because COVID has brought back a new consciousness that it is a global society. Everybody can be a victim of COVID. Also, it has brought the issues like hunger or human suffering can be universal. In such a time, how we react creatively. This is where I look at it, that it is like a pond. A pond has water, and it moves with the wind. And, or somebody throws a stone, and you are standing at the shore, and you relook at it, what happens there, and you try to reflect. And this 3-4 years, which is a period of intense human suffering create or sharpen your creative consciousness. This is where I look at it, that every day something happening where human sufferings are either increasing or decreasing. Let us look at it, COVID, when situation has human suffering has multiplied, and people die of lack of oxygen, people die of hunger, people die of without work, without medicine. All these come to us as a wave to hit my mind, and when it hits my mind, it goes to the also my heart, where heart and mind, when joined together, something called creativity comes out. This is where a social scientist faces a challenge. How to connect between your own heart and your mind. This can be connected only if you are a serious reader on the social science studies in social science, be anthropology, be sociology, be little bit political economy or political science or literature, because the literature carries intensively human sufferings, which other sciences, other disciplines cannot. That's why literature has brought us to nearer to this time. A social scientist has gone nearer to literature. That's what I feel, that every day some sufferings has happened, and that suffering I try to reflect. And for instance, and when you reflect over that sufferings turn into a joyful moment. That doesn't remain sufferings. The sufferings come in your mental and emotional world and create a moment of new poetry or new writing on politics or society, sociology or anthropology. These are all interrelated things. And you feel excited that you have succeeded to capture that moment of creativity. And that moment of creativity we must capture. And this can be captured only if you are reading, if you are actively reading, actively writing, and actively doing research and interacting with the people and going to the field and experiencing these sufferings to some extent. That's why I personally feel 5 years or 4 years back, before COVID came, I have never written a poem. But though I write stories and plays, but I have never written a poem. I was sitting and seeing in the television, workers are pushed out of the city and they're walking, and their pain on their leg created pain in my heart. And that pain reflected and came to my mind. And that pain created my first English poem, which I wrote. Like that, every day, so much suffering has increased in this world. They are unemployed. They are unable to enter into the city. Their children have lost schooling. They are going back to home where old parents are waiting for them, and they lack food today. And all these problems also partly created by powerful people. It's not always self-creation or sufferings are self-suffering. It is also created by the powerful people, maybe industry, maybe landlord, maybe high caste people, maybe political leaders. The sufferings have multiplied actually because of these powerful actors in the society. These actors also interact with us. And when they interact, we are trying to relate how human suffering increases. For instance, let us look at 5 or 3 important events. If lockdown would have not declared, what would have happened? Because India, that time, it was not such a serious issue, COVID, first phase, but lockdown was declared. People were pushed out. That's a one single decision also multiply impact on the human suffering. That's this human suffering have to be captured by creative people, be a literary person, be a social scientist, be a artist, painter. That's why you find this 5 years has succeeded to create new thinking. For instance, role of media today, it has transformed Indian thinking. Why? Because media is no more independent. It has lost its independence, lost its autonomy. And what has happened, it has been captured by some section of the society who control capital. And they also help political leaders, which political leadership, media, and corporate houses here converge. And if they converge, they create a reaction in you, because that's how that it doesn't help human feeling, but it creates sufferings. Sufferings multiplied by this convergence of three powerful people. That's why we must relook at our, as a social scientist, our independent thinking must reflect on these sufferings of the people, which are created by the three important actors in this society. And society no more is autonomous. It is a part of a global society. And global societies, we have to interact, we have to think, we have to boldly place it as it is. And my purpose of human creativity is like when I talk to my father as a farmer, he goes to field every day. I told him, why are you going to field every day? There is no work. Now every day when I go, I feel that I feel excited. There is something I can add to my cultivation. It's the same way we are all in social science or natural science. We are also every day have to do our work, and every day we have to add something or subtract something. Knowledge is a peculiar thing. Either it is added, it is getting added something new, or it is getting something subtracting something which are old, outdated. That's why knowledge is knowledge production is a very difficult task, and it is happening because the person who is trying to produce knowledge, he is intensely feel the sufferings of the people, and what are the causes of the suffering. That's why this feeling of one individual who is a creative person, I think that is very important, producing knowledge about the society. I think I can stop here, but I can recite a poem when you like.
So thank you, Professor Barik. So you can please recite your poem.
Okay.
Yes, Professor Barik.
Yes, I'm just found it. Today is the day when emergency was declared, and it created a lot of sufferings those days. And I am re-looking at by looking at a bird. Birds were kept in the cage. They could not fly. They could talk to their partners, their political workers, their lady love. Birds remain in the cage. They turn into heroes of Indian people. The tragedy is this: the members of the RSS turned into a cage, created ruckus after the incident. The story does not end here. It began there. They are active in politics. They create havoc. They threaten democracy. They attack the rights of minorities. They think of the fascist regime. They want to kill the workers by increasing working day. They want attack the rights of the farmer. They are against the majority of the people. They are attacking the soldiers. They harass the students. They have kept many in a cage, and under the stringent laws, they cannot talk to each other. They are kept in, as the Britishers did, in the cellular jail. Cellular jail is in Andaman Nicobar, Port Blair. Single room for one, without proper ventilation, no books, no reading materials. They have not declared it as a cage, but their brutality has surpassed any fascist regime. They attack students aspiring to be soldiers. No freedom of the press. Media is bought by them. They control the judges, get judgments for them. They harass the social activists. They would be no one to defend the tribals, Dalits, weaker sections. They are all in the cage. Today they are struggling to survive. It is COVID time. They live in a suffocated environment. They are the birds. Their wings are tied by the rope. They are in the chains. Many false cases have been filed. They live in fear. In the past, they lived in cage without fear, but some are dying in the cage without oxygen, without seeing their loved ones. They are being threatened to go back in the history. No economy, no democracy, no social change. It is simple fascism, keeping people in the cage. It is a brutalized one. Birds with their tired wings feel pain, feel suffocated, feel unhappy. They wait for the flying in the sky. Open space is calling them. They want to live with their people, maybe with their tribals or Dalits or workers or farmers. Today's cage is a real one. No oxygen is coming in. It is simple fascism. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Professor Barik. Now, Professor Barik has challenged us to understand the reality of suffering and how suffering becomes also a challenge for us to be creative. Now, Dr. Marharyta very insightfully told us about creativity and how all cultures have appreciation for creativity. The collectivist culture, individualist culture, and then Professor Barik has told us about suffering and challenges that we face. All this we now need into the whole challenge of social development. Now I see Professor Bhatt is raising hand, but I request you to please wait for a little while. Now I would invite Randhir to share his thoughts. And after Randhir, I would request Osman, Dr. Mallika, and Dr. Rafik, please. And then we would have conversations. So, Randhir.
Thank you, Professor Giri. And in sociology, first I can talk about social creativity, psychological perspective. Today I will be talking about the kind of social sources of cultural creativity. And only recall his name, he talks about creative minority. He gave a theory of social change. And creative minority is very functional in terms of shaping your social transformation. And I want to talk about two important Ronald Collins. Ronald Collins he talks about law of the small number. Only a few sets of philosophies and words. There are split too many. There is synthesis. So kind of he talks about agonal relationship. What drives both. So but there is more to it than this that makes the idea of Nietzsche. Nietzsche argued that society with a strong cultures were small and diverse, but with freedom of movement, a kind of cosmopolitan in nature. So there had to be both conflict and an ability to move around freely, exchange ideas. But there could not be true uniformity. There was enough commonality to allow ideas. Nietzsche's ideals were the independent German state. In Greek. So Ronald Collin talks about the substantive contents of philosophy that are different in China and Greece, similarities, level of network structure. In both the law of small numbers, relatively creative mind, was a kind of operative early as multiple actions emerges in new intellectual attention spaces. In both cases, kind of precipitating conditions involved in pluralism, pluralism of commercial development of literature, kind of a breakdown of traditional religious practices. Ronald Collin also, points the same issue with the development of ancient Indian philosophy. Yes, if you want a vibrant development of philosophical ideas, you need a kind of openness in terms of epistemology of development of ideas, that is political pluralism and the cosmopolitanism created by the free trade and education, in a kind of breakdown of the dominant world. If you have increasing political unity, trade barriers, less educated, so a kind of dominant worldview, you are not going to have a kind of average philosophical Nietzsche also talks about, kind of argues that the strength of culture is invariably proportional to the power of the government within society. So, think about the political economy of USA and India. There is a kind of space of creative development when we think about some transformations historically. So these are some of my. I will be brief so that we can have more time in discussion. So this is the very idea of Ronald Collin that I wanted to share with you, philosophy and development. And yesterday I was meditating and on there is a question I want to put here, and let's just meditate that. Is it because you believe in a social order that minimize social cohesion? Because just Professor Radhakanta cited one poem, and I can recall that time of emergence. So, is it because you believe in a social order that minimizes cohesion or unleashes human creativity to build prosperity? Or is it because you think the wrong people are running society? So suggest the major division in politics in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Randhir. Now I invite Osman, please.
Thanks a lot, Professor Ananta and Vishwaneedam, Dr. Vishwaneedam, for organizing this enlightful and insightful session. And thank you for Doctors Marharyta and Dr. Barik for sharing us their thoughts and their research. That was very interesting. I think Dr. Marharyta, she, as Professor Ananta told us, considers creativity something that many people can do and many societies can do. It is something general, and there are many ways of analyzing and presenting it. So it is not the kind of idea that there are very few people that are just creative as such. And Professor Barik, he also shared us with the idea that creativity, cultural creativity and other creativities are very important to contribute to the reduction of suffering, human condition. I think that is very important in terms of development. So that debate is going on, and Dr. Marharyta's paper or research has actually reminded me another interesting paper written by a prominent scholar in the United States, Professor Howard S. Becker. He's a sociologist, well-known sociologist. He has a very well-known paper he calls "Creativity is not a scarce." Creativity is not a scarce. Everybody is interested in it, and everybody is actually doing it, because we humanists, we are in this world. Being in this world, we are involved in the survival and everyday activities. So we create to stay our homes, to go to work, to interact with others. So we are actually doing creativity almost all the time. So his argument, Professor Howard, which is very similar to what Dr. Marharyta has said, is that it is actually not just the creativity, but the organization of it, how it is signified and organized. That creativity is very relevant, because there are many situations where creativity is monopolized. You know, we live in a very unequal world, developing world, underdeveloping world, and so on. So that kind of relationship creates where creativity is sometimes biased, you know, cultural creativity, scientific creativity, and other ways of creativities. There is another, there is a guy well known, now he died, but he's well known American technology, you know, tycoon, Steve Jobs. I don't know whether you know Steve Jobs. He has actually, scholars are saying he has created about 6-7 ways of how people in this world live or interact. Steve Jobs, through his technology and something like that. Most of our families now, they have mobile phones, smart mobile phones, and now we are also interacting across continents because of this creativity. But the things that people might forget is that Steve Jobs and others who have created some kind of technological revolution, they actually struggled. They were expelled from organizations, universities, and so on. So creativity, even if it is good, sometimes it is not easy, because the people who are with cultural and political and social power, they have to pick up. This is a world we live where these people have to pick up and recognize it, and then you can contribute. So this is a very struggling, very difficult process. And I think most of you Indian scholars who are in this session, they know that the IT technology in this world, especially in the United States, is run by Indians. You know, the creativity in the whole IT system is actually Google and many other, you know, giant companies who claim some kind of monopolization of creativity are run by Indians, actually. I don't know whether they are in India or in the United States, but it seems that they have adapted to the global structure at the top. So it is technology and culture. And actually, the medical sector is also the same. It's run by many Indians. but I think there are challenges with creativity, and it has something to do, as Professor Becker tells us, with organization and politicization of this. So there are many creative people in Africa, in the southern parts of the world, but in order for them to be recognized, they have to move to they have to come here to the north to actually become creative, or at least being confirmed as creative people. I think that is a very serious challenge. So we have global structural challenge, I will say. So I think people are creative and they are doing a lot of things, but there is still a struggle that has to be maintained, because the world is imbalanced, and now creativity is selected, depending on who is in charge and who is running this world. So and sometimes those people who claim they own this world, they want to be also manage this kind of creativity. So I'm concerned about how this creativity is managed and organized and legitimized and so on. So we can have a better world, whereas Professor Barik suggested, where there is less suffering and less. And this finally, I think we need to link this to the history as well. We need not to forget that not just the creativity, but in Africa, in other places, scholars, classical scholars, they consider it in these parts of the world, India and other places, during colonial times, these people from the developing countries, they are less creative. They are unable to reason, to think. They are unable to to create. Hegel said Africa and some parts of Asia, they still don't have any consciousness, So all these concepts are linked: consciousness, reasoning, creativity, and it is colonially framed and formulated. So we have to decolonize all of these concepts and try to find some kind of balanced ground where most of the humanity are actually are creative, and they can reason, and they can be conscious, and they can be, we are interlinked. If you see most of the cultural transformations that are made in this world, they are actually collectively produced, but that is not recognized. It's recognized as coming just from here, from the West, or from particular countries, the United States. Although we know what is happening in the United States, it is a collective production of humanity, but it is framed as something the United States has a monopoly of it, or the West has a monopoly of it. So I think we need to have this kind of democratization of this kind of transformations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Osman, for bringing many deep issues to our attention. As Randhir said, that organization of creativity, but organization of creativity may have a tendency to exclude some and include some, as you yourself said. So what we need is a movement of creativity. So that would really facilitate social development. And social development, not just static, but in evolutionary way. So therefore, social institutions should be such that they do not hinder creativity, and they take up it as their own responsibility to really not to kill creativity, and to support, to nurture the creative minds, the creative groups, critical social movements, and that is how a society grows. But when a society annihilates these people, whom Toynbee called the creative minority, and you refer to history, now how history has moved. History has moved with the work of what Toynbee calls as creative minority. Now, these creative minorities are always persecuted. But think of what kind of evolutionary possibilities would have been if the creative minorities were not persecuted, not killed. And I'm remembering here the story of a great mathematician, and her name is, I think, Hippeta. And she was, living in Alexandria around 4th century, and she was a great mathematician. And when she spoke, hundreds of people came to listen to her. And the bishop there, and he was so envious of her, and the way she was dragged from her chariot when she was going to lecture, and her body was really torn apart, through fingernails and everything. And a great physicist who has collaborated with Stephen Hawking, in his book he has written, think of what would have happened if this great mathematician was not butchered in 4th century. And he comments that humanity would have gone to moon even a millennium ago. So in fact, that is when we talk about collectivity and the great evolutionary challenge before collectivity and social development is to acknowledge that how society kills itself through the powerful and the custodians. And they are like, we have heard stories about both Lord Jesus Christ, when the babies, when he was born, the similar babies were throttled, and the king fearing. And Lord Krishna, when he was going to be born, then his uncle, maternal uncle Kamsa, fearing, he throttled, he strangulated many children. In a way, the question before us is that our society is condemned to be organization, social organization of society. Is it condemned to strangulate creativity, or it really facilitate it? And there is a dialectic here. So we continue the conversation. So we are enriched by the presence of Dr. Mallika MG, who teaches at Malayalam University. Just a week ago, I had the joy of blessing to meet with her and be enriched by her experience and thoughts. So I invite Dr. Mallika, please, to share her thoughts on the topic.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
How are you? Yeah,
Yes.
I'm traveling. That's why I could not that video. I'm not on this video.
Yes.
I'm traveling.
Yes, please.
I didn't thought of discussing or participating in this discussion. I just came to know what you are all are saying something about creativity. For me, I think is the whole part we need to generate creativity within the children, not this wealth or nothing. So lack of imagination and lack of creativity is the main reason for all these miserings. That's what I'm thinking. And in everywhere, if you are living, if you are just creating a relationship, or the sufferings also, we are having a lot of other options are there, but always we'll think that the ways or the path which already created, so that is the only way we can move. So a lot of other ways are there, it's closed, but that we have to just find out. That's a challenge, So lack of creativity is the major problem. So, and in almost all the world, people think that it's a depressive condition and there is no other option. So that is the major reason this world is like this. So I think majority are very nice people. They want to interact together, and but we always think that and this minority, they are creating some kind of a picture that in the world is like this. So we need to create optimism, and this pessimism and this kind of that helplessness that made the world very dark. And we all will, it's just like a illness or something, bacteria or something. It's just entering in our mind, and we all will be inactive, and no imagination, no fight, nothing is there. So I think everywhere, this, if you are having creative, you can find a way in everywhere, in every system, in every relationship, every person, as a personal life, every. So this is the thing I just want to say. It's not that I never had done any kind of research or anything. I just experienced. I only with my knowledge and with my thinking. I think this is the way, and saying very all the way and everywhere we need creativity. At least even if you are just a sweeping or sweeper, or if a person who is washing or washing the clothes, everywhere we need some creative ideas. That's why in same situations, same capital or same conditions, some people will finish it fast and some people will take it that lightly, and the same experience will make different people differently. So I think it's because of the difference in imagination, and our education system, what they actually doing, they are making everyone thinking in only one particular way. And there are a lot of ways in this. One situation can be seen in different ways, and that creativity we are killing in this education system. And there we have to just think what we can do in the childhood, early childhood itself. It's a very creative brain, and we are just making them no imagination. Everything we are just giving the models, and they are not creating any models for their own. So thank you, sir. Thank you. This is my my thoughts. That's all. Thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Mallika. And in fact, this drawing our attention to imagination is so important. And imagination, also critical imagination, radical imagination. Professor John Clemmer, who was to join us, Professor Clemmer also has been talking about the need for really developing our imagination. So now let me invite Gyan Luigi, please. Gyan Luigi. And in the meantime, I request friends who have thoughts to kindly put it in the chat box or raise your hand. So we would invite you, please. So Gianluigi. Okay, Gianluigi is taking some time. Let me invite Dr. Rafik, please. Dr. Rafik. Okay. Now Dr.
Hello,
Rafik. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, now I can hear you, please, Dr. Rafik. Salam alaikum, salam alaikum. I'm so happy. We are so happy too.
We are also very happy and also very thankful to you for giving me a chance to be a part of a scholarly network and to come virtually to present my idea. Very thankful to you and your organization. So today our discussion is on cultural creativity and social development. Let me start my presentation by defining or by giving a working definition to cultural creativity, what it really means to me. It is anything, cultural creativity is anything particular to a culture. It can be a belief, myth, ritual, traditional practices, festivals, customs, values, etc., etc. That is used for the development of a community or a region in a non-traditional approach. I'm very indebted to my friend and co-worker, Mr. Amir Ali, to frame such a working definition for cultural creativity. And this is, I start by defining cultural creativity in that sense. And also, I want to bring your attention towards the discussions and debate regarding the nexus between tradition and modernity. One of the dominant discourses tradition is against modernity, development, and progress. This is one of the dominant discourse regarding the nexus between tradition and modernity. In this way, most of the scholars of this kind, they see religion as an impediment to the development and progress. What I am trying to argue and to see that tradition and modernity are not polar opposite, but we could find a complementary relationship between these two, and also we can argue that tradition actually facilitated modernity. And in Kerala, for example, in this particular context, here there are various kinds of institutions affiliated to religious organizations. And taking some examples and cases related to the establishment and the development of these kinds of institutions, I want to find profaneness in sacredness. People, for example, people, especially the religious oriented community, they are giving many valuable things in kind of cash and kind for the deceased, for example. And at the other time, some others are offering something for these types of education institutions and other religious institutions of those who are yet not blessed with a baby, for example. And these practices related to the religion are considered to be to some camps as blind beliefs that have no relevance and significance in promoting and facilitating development. But sometimes we could manifestly and latently find that these kinds of active practices and social actions that are deemed to be blind beliefs and something other that latently or manifestly, sometimes manifestly promotes and facilitates development, various kinds of development. In Kerala, people, especially people Muslims, offering. I am working in such a educational institutions. It has been established and run on philanthropy, offerings and givings from the people. They are giving these kinds of for the sake of paradise and to God. And how these offerings and other charity activities are promoting community development. These institutions caters various types of educations and training to those students who are financially backward, who are sometimes they are not, they could not go to premier institutions for higher study. And these types of institutions are attracting students from these kinds of backgrounds and giving education and other training free of cost. And the point here is that people are donating money and sometimes rice and sugar and some other kinds of kinds to these institutions. And this the institution, the authorities are using this money and other kinds for the study and for the expense of the inhabitants, inmates of these institutions. And this resulted in empowering a community who were known for their backwardness for years. And this is what I want to bring your attention towards such a particular dimension of the development. We are always talking about the development devoid of the spiritual dimension. Here, I want to bring a spiritual dimension into development and talk about one of the integral development. That is one of the interesting area of our Professor Ananta, and also I am very much indebted to Professor Ananta to develop these kinds of thinking. Here, I want to conclude that tradition is not always against development, and it facilitates, really facilitates development, and we could, and also profane and sacred are not opposite things. We could find profaneness in sacred things also. Some religious practices, how some religious practices are promoting and facilitating development. In the process of developing these ideas into a research article, I am at the beginning of this process. I need the help from you, like people and scholars. Let me conclude my brief speech. Thank you for everyone for listening.
So, Sukran and Nanni, Dr. Rafiq. And now I invite Amit, please, to share his thought. After Amit, we'll request Gyan, please. Amit. Amir Ali, please.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
May I share a slide, please?
Yes.
Yes, Amir, you can share your slide.
Okay, okay. Can you see it, please?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, okay, fine. So, talking about this idea of cultural creativity, let me give you how I, started thinking about the idea of cultural creativity. There were two things that came into my mind when I think about the idea of development. The first one is the modern community is largely, bad of values. Okay. In the sense, the people lost trust between each other. So in development, trust is the major, change element that connect people with each other. So that is the first triggering point that help that triggered me to think about this cultural creativity. Another aspect is sustainability. Is it the innovations that help us? Is it the innovation or the values that help us in nurturing sustainability in our development discourses? So these were the two aspects that promote me, that made me to think about the idea of cultural creativity. So when we talk about this, community which is bad of values, we have this nation state system through which we we use power in order to make values, in order to sustain values. On the other hand, the religions or the spirituality that use morality as a tool of establishing values. So is it the modern nation state idea of promoting values through the constitutional morality win the heart and minds of people, or the religious or spiritual idea of creative values through piousness that promote or that create values. So my point is that values is the central in promoting development. So that's how I think about, the Arabic colleges that has been running in across Kerala. Roughly, there are nearly thousands of Arabic colleges has been working in Kerala, and all these colleges are a premier institute for Islamic higher education, and the education is provided for the free of cost, and which is accessible to all the students irrespective of poor and rich, and they also provide quality education. Hence, they don't have any sustainable income to run such educational institutions. But still now nearly thousands of religious institutions has been working in Kerala without any sustainable income. How does that work? So here the idea of culture comes. The scholars, the Islamic scholars in Kerala created a culture in Kerala by inspiring from some of the teachings from Quran and Hadith, or the religious scriptures, and promote people to build an ecosystem where people have easy access to religious education. It's not simply the religious education, it's also a man-making process in other sense. Okay, so in another way we can say that it is a creative expression of culture for the common good, or in another term, creative re-expression of a culture for the common good. So here you can see a news article which says that in a mosque in Kerala, due to the presence of a mosque in Kerala, the people have no hunger. So how a mosque that facilitate a society of zero hunger. So as it sees in the 15,000 poor people have been have been the direct beneficiaries of this poverty eradication program of this mosque in Malappuram district. So
Hello, Amir.
Maybe his network is
Okay.
not.
Thank you, Amir. And now, Gyan Luigi, please. Gyan Luigi, okay. It's taking some time. Minati, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I feel privileged to listen to such a enlightened discussion by all these speakers and discussion. So I just want to say one thing, add one thing to the creativity. First thing is every creativity or every creative person has to be empathetic. As Radhakanta sir was telling, like the suffering makes the people write more or create more, whether it is poetry, it is art, it is articles, anything. He was talking about COVID only, but any type of suffering, like war, famine, injustice in politics, injustice in society, it can be anything can means all this suffering can make you think how you have to creatively write things. So Ananta Bhai was also telling about not hindering the creativity process. So I just want to know whether our educational institutions are imparting those creativity, whether they are providing us a ground to breed that, whether they are allowing us to think convergently and divergently both. So there are many questions like this, whether they are encouraging us to have the independent learning and whether they are allowing us to practice the tolerance and openness to new ideas. I don't know, I mean, whether they're motivating also to develop the knowledge on the base of divergent thinking, because all these things are very much necessary for creativity. Not whether we are being taught not to judge people and accepting the ambiguity and promoting that self-evolution ideas and helping to accept and cope up with the failure also. I feel that way. It is not only the state. I think the society also condemns if you go beyond, in the creativity, you do something. If it is not the regular norm, it is not being accepted. Of course, the creativity should have the dignity. To agree with that. So, if we can give, attention to these basic things, we can actually have more creativity in our institution, in our social life, and probably we can resolve the issues what is being raised by this. But to the Dr. Radhakant, I have one not question actually query. He was talking about creativity and reflection. So what should be the order? First we should have the creation, then have reflection, or first we should reflect and then have the creativity. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Minati.
I think Professor Gyan Glui, I think is working now.
Am I
Yes,
audible now? Because
yes,
Yeah.
you are
yes,
audible. Please.
I have changed the microphone. I'm sorry. Well, I thank you very much. It was, of course, wonderful. I have noted some notices. That is, well, about creativity. I think that one aspect which perhaps sometimes is forgotten is that creativity does not belong only to geniuses. That is, usually creativity is something which is seen as belonging only to superior person, mentally superior person, and not to common people. Whereas there are studies, for instance, of Teresa Amabile, who is professor at the Harvard Business School, which say yes, well, of course, geniuses are more creative than common people, but actually creativity belongs to every one of us. The problem is with creativity is that, so to speak, it is a slight, very weak disposition, attitude. That is, it needs really very, very few things in order to destroy the creativity of the persons. We have some examples, for instance, with Paulo Freire and with all the tradition of the critical pedagogy, which demonstrate how the creativity is destroyed when the social order is so that wants creativity to be destroyed in order to maintain itself. That is, in a conservative way of thinking in which the order, the established order of the society should at every cost be maintained. Creativity is the first enemy. Creativity of some classes of people, for instance, of some individuals. And therefore, creativity is subdued to a process of annulation. For instance, Freire speaks of the bank account of teaching, or the internalization through which the hegemony, the cultural hegemony of some classes is imposed to other classes, which become to be such as replicants of the classes which have hegemony. But of course, also there are for instance, in another area of studies, always the studies, for instance, of Teresa Amabile, it is shown that, for instance, in the offices, in the firms, in the enterprises, there are often the problems which managers destroy the every form of creativity of the persons who are employed in a firm, in an enterprise. That is, creativity is something which is very, so to speak, a very weak plant, which needs cultivation and which can be destroyed very, very easily, independently of the field of study which we, or the field of work which we take into consideration. So I wanted only to say this, and well, I thank you very much for the wonderful, for the brilliant contributions. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the microphone. I do not know what it happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Minati. As always, you both bring many new dimensions. So slowly we are being embraced by time. So let us request Dr. Barik to quickly reply to Minati, and Marharyta, you might also have some thought. So Dr. Barik, please.
No, very interesting question has come. What restricts human creativity? As Professor Giri raised a point from putting from Toynbee, the creative flow, that's a correct fact. But how that creative flow can reach the people, which can solve the sufferings of the people? That is the real issue. And which one professor told that colonial authority restricts human knowledge to flow. That's a correct point, because a colonial authority is a structure which doesn't recognize quality of indigenous mind. And once they do not recognize quality of indigenous mind, they think every problem is there because indigenous mind does not think so much. And it is a fact, colonial mind, the colonial authority has been challenged by Tagore in his poem that keep your head high, the right to liberty and freedom. The same way, our friend has raised this point. And another question came to me from her, from that how we can work, which can help our people reduce the human suffering. This is where the real question. This is a challenge before us, before her, before me, before everybody. For instance, today, Tamil Nadu has a high per capita income. It is a double of national average. It is a highly developed society economically. And but somehow today, there is, if you look yesterday's Hindu paper, one finds conflict between one caste versus other caste. It's so sharp that people do not want to interact with each other. That means somewhere we are creating knowledge. Also somewhere we are not able to interact with our people. By that suffering can be reduced. This is where we have to think the creative flow must recreate a channel of communication to the people by which problem can be addressed. Otherwise, knowledge can be created for the sake of knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Barik. Now I request Dr. Marharyta, please, to kindly please share your reflections on our deliberations. Dr. Marharyta.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for highlighting what was exactly the main point I wanted to make, and namely that we can all be creative. So once again, it depends a great deal on how we understand creativity, and once again, it's very much when introducing me a remark that most of my research so far has been on identity. So creativity is very much an issue of identity. So sometimes people just don't identify themselves as creative individuals, and thus they really stifle their own creativity. So it's really important here to understand all the various forms creativity can take, and also what creativity is not. And here I would like to remind you about the very interesting case of Elizabeth Holmes, who persuaded some of their wealthiest investors over there that she was onto a huge discovery that would revolutionize clinical diagnostics. And in fact, it was all a lie, so it seems. So she managed to attract so many investors, even though she did not have anything to show, any discovery, precisely because she pretended to be this prototypical kind of creative person very well. She just pressed all the right buttons, and well, a lot of people paid dearly for that. So here again, it's very much a matter of privilege, of knowing the buttons and having the necessary resource. And I wish all of us to be able to distinguish between appearance and reality as far as creativity is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marharyta. You are really concluding with a very profound challenge, appearance and reality. And that brings us to many dimensions, the sociological, our own human condition, and also spiritual, in the sense that how appearance, we are always caught in many nets of appearance, and then we really do not open ourselves to reals of many kind. So dear friends, we have been blessed to have had many interesting conversations. So we would continue such sharing in our weeks to come. And we invite all of you to please have your kind interest, and especially the new kind of collaboration that we are crafting. As I mentioned, I was visiting Darul Huda Islamic University. There Amir and Dr. Rafiq and Dr. Mallika from Malayalam University. They are working on the ground on some of these issues, on the issue of cultural tradition, creativity, language. So Vishwaneedam and the centers. So we used to craft collaborations also with Dr. Marharyta. So we would like to continue our conversations and collaborations. And your work is so inspiring. And also Osman. So now we are slowly coming to our concluding moment. So I invite Minati to share a few thoughts towards the end in terms of vote and songs of thanks.
The quotations I want to share.
Okay.
Is very important. It is John William Gardner said, a creative individual has the capacity to free himself from the wave of social pressures in which the rest of us are caught. He is capable of questioning the assumption that the rest of us.
Yes, that is a very good quotation. But Gardner also, we have to acknowledge the constraints that we have, in the sense that a creative individual is capable, but most of the time he or she is put in jail. And and that is remembering the emergency, what went on, and now the undeclared emergency. So
Yes, I just want to one more addition. And Ram Manohar Lohia once said at some time, jail is the good place for creativity.
but only when we live in jail we can experience it. And like the cellular jail, the isolation, and the kind of terrible, Minati spoke about empathy. In fact, what is this jail? Our friend Osman is from Aarhus, and in Scandinavia there are open jails, and it is not that, but while in Scandinavia, the whole attitude is really to reform and to really unfold the potential of self and society. But in contemporary India and USA, it seems to put everybody in the jail who do not agree with us. Okay, so now Minati, please.
Hello, should I read the poetry?
Yes,
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Okay, the poem is titled If Only. If only I could change something to make the world beautiful, it would be the hearts full of love in hope. If only I could change something to make the world beautiful, it would be the hearts full of love in hope. You won't need to talk about brotherhood. You won't talk about my faith and your faith. If only I could fill the minds with trust, it would be just a human being without a label. You won't talk about the borders and division. You won't talk about the fights and reconciliation. If only I could spread the message of care, it would be for each other. It won't be a difficult to find and rare. You won't make the Mother Earth bare whatever it offers, all offsprings should share. If only my writings have virtue, it could change the world. It would be for peace, happiness, and humanity world. You won't talk about the gender bias and equality. It should be live and let live and love and spirituality. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. So for the vote of thanks, I, Minati Pradhan, on the behalf of Vishwaneedam Center, I thank our chief speaker, Dr. Marharyta Fabrykant and Dr. Radhakanta Barik for their very insightful and enlightened presentation. I also thank our moderator, Professor Kumar Giri, for arranging such insightful sessions for us to learn every week. I also thank Randhir Kumar Gautam for his presentation, and he's also our convener and planner and executor of all this. So I thank him so much. I also thank Dr. Usman Farah and Dr. Malika and Dr. Rafiq and Amarali for their very insightful discussion and presentation. I also thank Professor Jan Luigi for his insightful discussion as always. I also thank all the participants and all the listeners, all the viewers, and pardon me if I forgotten somebody's name, anybody's name. So I thank you all. Thank you so much.
So thank you. And
thank you.
Marharyta.
Thank you,
Professor
Radhakanta Barik sir and Marharyta Fabrykant. Namaskar. Thank you. Thank you so much.